My name's Rhonda Mort, and I'm the children's librarian here at Willard Library, and I'm happy to share some stories with you today. We will be having a summer reading this year. We will do most of it online, but starting like in June, we're going to have space for some families to come in, and once again we'll be maintaining that 6 foot, and we will all be wearing our masks. So without further ado, let's get to our stories. This book is called Jack and the Giant BBQ by Eric A. Kimmel. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Jack who loved barbecue. He would ride his pony across the mountains of West Texas for a taste of really fine ribs or sausage. One day, Jack asked his mother, "Ma, how come all we ever have for dinner is beans and tamales? How come you never cook barbecue?" "I can't," Jack's mother told him. "Whenever I smell barbecue, I think of your daddy, and then I start crying. I can't eat barbecue with my plate full of tears." "What happened to Daddy? You never told me," Jack said. "I guess you weren't old enough to hear the story," Jack's mother said, dabbing at his eyes. "Your father made the finest barbecue in West Texas. He won every barbecue contest there was. One day a giant came along. He ate up all our barbecue and stole Dad's barbecue book, the one with all the secret recipes. It broke Daddy's heart to lose that book. He just keeled over and died. From then on, I couldn't stand the taste of barbecue again." Jack made a vow right on the spot. "I'll find that giant wherever he is, and I'll take back my daddy's recipe book. If I don't do it, may I never taste a bit of barbecue again." Jack set out the next day. All of the storybooks said that giants live above the clouds. The only way Jack knew to get higher to the mountains was to go to Mount Pecos. And it was the tallest mountain in West Texas. Jack rode his pony to the foot of the mountain, and then he began climbing. Jack climbed until he reached the mountaintop. He stepped onto the clouds and started walking. Soon he began smelling something sweet and smoky, with just the right hint of vinegar and spices. Jack followed the barbecue smell as it grew stronger and stronger. It led up to a beat up old shack on a football field. It was as tall as a 10-story building. The sign on the front should have read Giant's Barbecue, but the G and the Q had dropped off long ago. Now all it said was Ian's Barbie. The rest of the place didn't look much better. Shingles were falling off the roof. Windows were broken. The door drooped on its hinges. The patio and parking lot were a sea of trash. "A tornado hitting this dump would be an improvement," Jack explained. He pushed open the door and walked inside. Inside looked even worse. Grease dripped down the wall. Rib bones carpeted the floor and crunched under Jack's boot as he stepped to the counter. "Hello, is anybody home?" Jack called out. "Only me, lonesome and blue, unless you're looking for the giant, but I don't think you want to be here when he shows up." The voice came from the jukebox in the corner. "The giant stole my daddy's recipe book," Jack told the jukebox. "I aim to get it back. Will you help me?" "Count on me to stand by my man, or boy," the jukebox said. "I hate that giant. He promised me a mansion on the hill. Said I'd be the happiest girl in the whole USA. Instead, I ended up somewhere over the rainbow. He won't even listen to my music anymore." The jukebox shed a tear. "You bet I know where your book is. It's tucked between my 45s in slot D9, right between your cheating heart and Poncho and Lefty." Jack climbed inside the jukebox. He reached down inside slot number 9, D, but before he could get his fingers on the recipe book, he heard a pickup pull up in the parking lot. It was a mighty big pickup truck. "It's the giant! You've got a tiger by the tail, boy," the jukebox told Jack. Jack hid behind the records. The shack's walls shook as the giant stomped in and he sniffed the air. "Fee, fi, fo, fum, a Texas boy this way has come. I'll dip him in salsa and pico de gallo and swallow him down for Cinco de Mayo." "You're crazy," said the jukebox. "Crazy for thinking anybody'd come in here. What you smell is trash. Why don't you clean it up? It's giving me the honky-tonk blues." "Aw, shut your tater trap," roared the giant. "I'll tell you what, I'm hungry. What's for supper?" He opened the smoker and took out 2 sides of beef, 10 racks of ribs, and a 50-foot long piece of sausage. He washed down everything with 24 pitchers of sweet tea. The giant tossed the trash on the floor. Then he leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Soon he was snoring like a summer thunderstorm. "Did you get your book?" the jukebox asked Jack. "I see it, but I can't reach it," Jack said. "I'll need more time." "Funny how time slips away. You better not be here when the giant wakes up," the jukebox said. "Get out of here, and you can look for it later." "How can I do that?" Jack asked. "These giant rib bones are the size of skis. The floor is slick with grease. Put me on a couple of the ribs and slide me out the door and give me a push. It'll be like skiing down Mount Pecos," the jukebox said. Jack did just that. He hopped on and off they went. The race was on. About then the giant woke up with a hankering for some barbecue. "Where's my recipe book?" he growled. That's when he noticed the jukebox was gone. He saw the rib bone tracks across the greasy floor leading to the open door. It didn't take him long to figure out what happened. When he did, he turned hotter than a pepper sprout. He jumped in his pickup truck and went tearing across the clouds after Jack. But Jack and the jukebox were flying. They zoomed right through the hole in the clouds and slid down the side of Mount Pecos, all the way to the ground. The giant saw the hole too, but he was going too fast to brake. That giant pickup roared through the clouds and smashed all the mountains in West Texas flat. Since then, West Texas has been as flat as a skillet, all the way to New Mexico. As for Jack, he opened his own barbecue shack. He serves the best barbecue in West Texas. The giant works for him. It was the only way he could get decent barbecue. Ma waits tables. The jukebox plays Hank, Patsy, Willie, and all the greatest country hits. If you're ever in West Texas, drop by. It's not hard to find. Just turn left when you see the sign. You can't miss it. Just look for Jack's Giant Barbecue. And there's a note from the author here. Barbecue is a meat slow cooked over charcoal and seasoned with endless varieties of sauces, ribs, and marinade. My favorite barbecue is Texas barbecue, especially when you get it at a beat-up shack out in the country with sawdust on the floor, a jukebox playing Willie Nelson, and pickups lined end to end in the parking lot. Jack and the Giant Barbecue is my original version, loosely based on the traditional English tale of Jack and the Beanstalk. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Miss Lucy with Willard Library, and I'm here to read you some of my favorite children's books today. This is Madeline by Ludwig Bellemans, a favorite of mine since I was a little girl. In an old house in Paris that was covered with vines lived 12 little girls in 2 straight lines. In 2 straight lines they broke their bread, they brushed their teeth, and they went to bed. They smiled at the good, and they frowned at the bad. And sometimes they were very sad. They left the house at 9:30 in 2 straight lines. In rain or shine. The smallest one was Madeline. She was not afraid of mice. She loved winter, snow, and ice. And to the tiger at the zoo, Madeline just said, "Pooh, pooh." And no one knew so well how to frighten Miss Clavel. In the middle of one night, Miss Clavel turned on her light and said, "Something is not right." Little Madeline sat in bed, cried and cried, her eyes were red. And soon after Dr. Kahn came, he rushed out to the phone. And he dialed Danton 106. "Nurse," he said, "it's an appendix." Everybody had to cry. Not a single eye was dry. Madeline was in his arm, in a blanket, safe and warm. In a car with a red light, they drove off into the night. Madeline woke up 2 hours later in a room with flowers. Madeline soon ate and drank, and on her bed there was a crank, and a crack on the ceiling that had the habit of sometimes looking like a rabbit. Outside were birds, trees, and sky, and so 10 days passed quickly by. One nice morning, Miss Clavell said, "Isn't this a fine day to visit Madeline?" Visitors from 2 to 4 read a sign outside her door, and tiptoeing with solemn face, with some flowers and a vase. In they walked and then said, "Ah," when they saw the toys and candy and dollhouse from Papa. But the biggest surprise by far, on her stomach was a scar. "Goodbye," they said, "we'll come again." And the little girls left in the rain. They went home and broke their bread and brushed their teeth and went to bed. In the middle of the night, Miss Clavell turned on her light and said, "Something is not right." And, afraid of a disaster, Miss Clavell ran fast and faster. And she said, "Oh, children, please do tell me what is troubling you." And all the little girls cried, "Oh, boo-hoo, we want our appendix out too." "Oh, good night, little girls. Thank the Lord you are well. And now, go to sleep," said Miss Clavell. And she turned out the light, and she closed the door, and that's all there is. There isn't any more. The end. After the Fall, by Dan Santat. My name is Humpty Dumpty. This is my favorite spot, high on the wall. I know it's an odd place for an egg to be, but I loved being close to the birds. Then, one day, I fell, and I'm sort of famous for that part. Folks called it the Great Fall, which sounds pretty grand. It was just an accident, but it changed my life. Fortunately, all the king's men managed to put me back together. Well, most of me. There were some parts that couldn't be fixed or healed with bandages and glue. And after that day, I became afraid of heights. I was so scared that it kept me from enjoying some of my favorite things. I walked past the wall every day, and I would think about climbing that ladder again. I really miss the birds and being high above the city, but I could never do it because I knew that accidents can happen. I eventually settled for watching the birds from the ground. It wasn't the same, but it was better than nothing. And one day, an idea flew by. Making planes was harder than I thought. It was easy to get cuts and scratches, but day after day I kept trying and trying until I got it just right. My plane was perfect, and it flew like nothing could stop it. I hadn't felt that happy in a long time. It wasn't the same as being up in the sky with the birds, but it was close enough. Unfortunately, accidents happen. They always do. I almost walked away again, but then I thought about all the time I'd spent working on my plane and the other things that I'd missed. So I decided I was going to climb the wall. But the higher I got, the more nervous I felt. I didn't want to admit it, but I was terrified. I didn't look up, I didn't look down, I just kept climbing, one step at a time, until I was no longer afraid. Maybe now you won't think of me as that egg, who was famous for falling. Hopefully, you'll remember me as the egg who got back up and learned how to fly. The end.